very excited about our guest today. He's someone who is super observant and super funny, and we're going to bring him in to talk about a lot of fun things. So without any further ado, this is Owen Benjamin. What is up?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure having you on. There's so many things you're talking about lately that are interesting to me. For one, I'd like to hear more about how Nazi meth has changed America.
Dude, I mean, I was a history major, World War II. And you want to hear the whole story or
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Right to the meth?
No, let's hear the whole story.
I'm from Oswego, New York, which was the only town in America to take in Jewish refugees during World War II. And I always found that very interesting. I always took it as a point of pride when I was totally mainstream about the narrative. But I always was like, that doesn't make any sense, though. I thought that's the whole reason we went to war. It was only 900 people in this little town that just has nuke plants and alcoholism. And so then, I was a World War II history major in college, got the whole mainstream thing, studied it in the Czech Republic. I got really interested in tyrannical government takeovers, whether it was Soviet or fascist or whatever. I wanted to know like what the environment is before that can lead to that. And then, of course, I became a comedian, and I always thought my my degree was useless until now. I'm like, I'm the guy, but before it was pretty useless. And then, I learned a ton of the alternative views of World War II and, like what some of the questions and all that stuff and like how the Allies were bombing Dresden and all that stuff. And then I started realizing how much of a role the pharmaceutical companies played with like IG Farben and Bayer and, what was really going on in a lot of these concentration camps. They were making Fanta. I'm not even kidding. Like if you look at the history of Coca-Cola, they were making a type of Coca-Cola in Nazi Germany called Fanta. They had to rebrand to Fanta for political reasons, but they were doing that at labor camps. And so these things aren't lining up. And then I start looking into what these big drugs were that they were coming up with. And one of them was the super soldier drug, which is what Captain America is about how to like pump stuff into a guy to turn him from like a little dude to a giant. And this goes back to the berserkers. This isn't new to intoxicate yourself for it to become like an animal at the battlefield. But this was next level. And the Germans are really good at engineering and taking things to that next level. And then you look at the 12 or however many years you look at the Third Reich, almost like one giant meth bender. It makes so much sense where it starts off very productive and hopeful. Like Hitler's like, Autobahn, what's the speed limit? No speed limit.
Do you see any parallel between that and kind of the progressives that are in control of government right now? Because everything we get from them is that they're all having like drug-fueled orgies. And it's kind of funny that, so when I talk to my pastor and whenever I'm talking to him that I'm in a negative headspace, the first question he asks is like, do you do drugs? And like, I'm like, no, I don't. But he thinks like that channels demons. Like anything that alters your mindset channels demons. So is there any parallel between like going too far and like the massive drug use that all these people are consuming?
Dude, I got a total opinion on that. Have you guys listened to my stream with Jerry Marzinski?
No, I haven't, but I like Jerry. Crazy.
I've been so into Jerry, and I had him on, and it's a really good episode. He even gets into his life more than he ever has on other episodes. And he was a prison psychiatrist. I think Nefarious is loosely based on him. Like that Christian movie about the guy who goes serial killer. Yep. And he's possessed by a demon. Yep. Because Jerry was working with schizophrenics, and he was like one of the only guys to ask, what are the voices saying? And he was an atheist, materialist type guy, just a total scientist. And he said he couldn't look away from the evidence that they were like coherent beings and not just hallucinations. And the one thing he said that was consistent was methamphetamine use, where people would be strung out on meth and they'd start seeing shadow people and stuff. And the thing that he thought was crazy was how like multiple people would be doing the same thing, and they'd see the shadow people in the same place saying the same things. Like it was like they're watching a different movie. And I have a theory about that. I think it's like entering that realm, because I do think there are spiritual realms. I think it's more about not sleeping because than it is about meth itself. Because what the common denominator I keep seeing is no sleep, which is very associated with meth. But if you take like children's meth, like an Adderall or a Vyvanse in the morning and you sleep 8 hours a night, you know, you're probably not going to be hearing voices and seeing shadow people. But even if you're an alcoholic and you never get REM sleep, like I had a grandfather that was like one of those old school drinkers, like not modern, you know, Zima. I'm talking about like he was in the mines, you know, and they're drinking to like deal with life. And so they would never really get sleep, and they would get these hallucinations of serpents and all this crazy shit. So I think what it is not sleeping. And I think that's why war meth is so crazy, because when they invaded Poland, the Nazis were like yacked on meth and they were up for days. And that's when I think you can break into other realms and get demonic. And then they're inventing all these crazy weapons. It's like a cartoon. It's like a Roadrunner cartoon. They're inventing like, you know, like giant cannons that don't work, but they're the biggest in the world. And then they're the crash and then all the shame.
And then the V2 rockets, there was a point where they were only making 2 a day. And then Werner von Braun was like, we need 200 a day, you know, like we got to do a lot of this now. And didn't they make everyone start taking meth? Like, wasn't it implemented through society?
The whole society. And there's a lot of people that are pissed off.
Kids?
Like right now, they're like they're like, oh no, they cleaned degeneracy. They took it out. I'm like, on paper, but in reality, they were giving it to the whole population. When you look at those old movies, it looks like a rave. Like everyone's like, it's like, put your hands in the air. And they're all like, you know, it's like an evil rave.
Yeah. Evil rave.
And so yeah. And I mean, a lot of it has to do with the PTSD from World War I. Like if I was going to defend the SS guys, I'd be like, you know, when you've been through Verdun and the Somme and you're just, you know, and you've already been pumped, filled with all this morphine to kill the pain of mustard gas attacks. It's like, you're just in a position where you're in a different realm and you're not going to be making good calls. Like you invade Russia without jackets. That's meth.
That's meth.
You know, you're going to Stalingrad in the winter and you're like,
So you're specifically like a World War II major, right?
yeah.
But I'm assuming that still you learned a lot about history. So my question is,
and I love history. Yeah.
you have a perspective of World War II that is kind of definitely not the one that was being taught here. What other very intrinsically American aspect of history do you also have like a European dissident different understanding of that you think that us Americans like completely don't have any context of?
Well, I think that the fundamental is that it's all about the financial system, all of it. Civil War, Vietnam, all of it. It's like Vietnam, we're on the world reserve currency. France wants its gold back. We don't have the gold. You know, it's all about the financial system. And then people want to just blame bankers. And I'm like, but the financial system is a reflection of our choices every day and our sins and like unearned wealth. And so Civil War, same thing. And then after the event, you paint yourself as the good guy. You know, you're ending slavery, you're saving the Jews, you're stopping communism. And that's how you get good people to fight your wars. But in my opinion, the truth is it's like, it's almost like debt collection on a macro scale with a lot of blood. And there's also a eugenic component too.
Yeah, and I feel like war opens up the possibility for human experimentation because we've done it here.
Yes.
The Nazis did it, the Japanese did it to the Chinese, and it's like the war is over, supposedly, and we go in and collect the information. Like the Unit 731 stuff that the Japanese were doing was grotesque, right? And
insane.
It's insane stuff that people don't really talk about enough. I'm like, that's some of the most craziest stuff, the vivisections they were doing, cutting people open, raping people so they can give birth to to babies that they would destroy, freezing hands and shattering them after they're frozen. And then we went in as the good guys and took all the information.
But how much of that is
and
like
the methodology?
How much of that is like dehumanizing propaganda to be like, this is the extent of our enemy. Like they
Right.
freeze people to shatter their hands. Like
Right.
I'm sure anecdotally some of it's true, but also, you know, I can see it being constructed to be like a red scare individually for every single
For sure.
like enemy that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
what do you
think it's a tiny amount of people. Like, it's not like the Japanese, we're all collectively like, we have to freeze hands. And I think it's
What?
about like, as a farmer, okay, you want some gravy?
Yes.
Ever since I've had goats and cows and alpacas and everything, like as a farmer, I no longer fear or judge the system at all because
What
I
does that
know
mean?
it's farming. And it's like, when I try to explain it to people, it can be either so freeing or horrifying that sometimes people shut down. But I'm like, all that horror is about herd management, even though that sounds crazy, but like, so I'm like, you know, milking my goats and I'm giving them grain and they always come for the grain. That's like entertainment, pornography, corn syrup. And then I put them in debt. I put a thing around their neck and then I take their labor. Like I take their milk. All milk is white. It doesn't matter the color of the goat, but I'll start using division amongst them. I will ban the testicles of unfit males and tell them they're brave. Like I will
Goat
get them,
eugenicist.
dude, I will get them to come and go based on these carrots and sticks. So
Right.
you look at a human being, we're above animal. Like I'm assuming you guys have a spiritual background. Like I'm not a materialist.
Yep.
So we're not cows or goats. So if you are herding man, it's when a man is in an animalistic state, which I believe is by choice. That's why I'm not scared about it, because you can choose free will and accountability. But if you don't and you act like an animal, there's a science behind that. And so much of World War II is figuring out how to fracture the mind with like MK Ultra and deception and all this stuff. I think that was what really came out of the camps was these experiments. Like, how do you get someone in a fundamental contradiction so that their inner world is always exhausted, almost like a bunch of apps on a computer where it just can't function? And then it yearns for authority. You know, it's like very biblical. You get them to worship anything but God and fear anything but God. And then they get exhausted and then you can tell them what to do and they do it.
Yeah.
And so it's both good news and horrifying news, depending on how you look at it.
Right. And it comes down to you to be able to sift through that chaos distortion. And
Yeah.
I also agree that, well, I wonder what you think about it. A lot of what they were doing in Germany has been implemented here today in terms of keeping people drugged up and confused, right? And whether it's MK Ultra or just SSRIs, keeping people
Therapy.
dumbed down, therapy, any number of reasons or any number of things, substances or ideas that have kept the populace in check or just subdued is at an all-time high. It seems like, to me at least. And that made me think about, I think I heard you fairly recently, Owen, say that your favorite comedy troupe was by the name NASA.
Yeah.
So NASA, to me at least, feels like a thing that has also been playing magic on the populace. How do you think the meth in Nazi Germany and the NASA comedy troupe connect for the people who might not know?
Oh, well, dude, I came up with a funny thing. I haven't even tweeted about it. You'll get a kick out of it. I think JFK was on so much meth that he was dialed in with the Nazis. He's like, we go to the moon, we go to the moon. Meanwhile, like normal scientists are like, there's no. And meanwhile, the Nazis are so yacked out. They're like, we can get out, yeah. But anyway, so Operation Paperclip, NASA was founded by Wernher von Braun, who was an SS major. That's one of the fundamental contradictions that happens in a lot of baby boomer, especially minds, like Christian baby boomer right-wing guys. Their main thing is like the Bible and beating the Nazis. And I'm like, I show them NASA. I'm like, JPL was founded by Jack Parsons, who was like the head of Aleister Crowley's
Babylon workings.
Yeah. You know, they're literally doing conjuring. It was like his wife had an affair with L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was his friend. So I'm like, this is just pure occult Luciferianism. And then I'm like, NASA was founded by Wernher von Braun, and you have Walt Disney in there, and their whole thing was about mind control and fantasy and esoteric symbol. And then you look at Artemis, Gemini, Apollo. I'm like, are those the apostles, guys? Like, what are we talking about here? And I'm not saying that the people that fall for it are bad people. It's just such a fundamental contradiction that they can't really seem to get out of it. They're like, we went to the moon with grit. And so when you're looking at NASA, it's like a mythology. It's like this incredible thing, but it's so obviously ridiculous that I don't know. I think the bigger the push for the mind control, the more you grab, the more you have to show. Because I do think that the world is fair and God is merciful. And I don't think that they can do anything to us that we don't accept. And so when you're looking at the head of NASA saying, we got rid of the technology and it's too painful to come back. And he's like, we play out because
we recorded over the greatest achievement in human history.
I think
what
that
they're
was,
saying.
There was a
I think
Maverick
the joke
marathon
in
on
I think the joke in American Psycho is referencing that when he keeps saying he has to return videotapes, where he's like, "Oh, I have to return the videotapes." It's like it's so dumb.
Owen, I know how to break the. I think I know how to break the space spell.
How?
What?
Because the thing about space and why they by the way, with space I mean that the moon landing is dumb and it didn't happen. Why people cling on to it is what you said. It's like an American myth. You know, it's our legend. Yeah. It's like we went to the moon and we did it and we beat the Russians to it and no one has been able to do it before because we were so base back then. Here's how you do it, in my opinion. I'm a marketing guy, so I always see things.
I love it. I do marketing's fascinating.
Yes. So it's like we tell people, listen, we're so freaking based that we convinced the entire world that in 1969 that we went to the moon. Even
bro, that's so funny you see that. I'm already doing that.
That should be our legend.
No, like rhetoric, marketing, comedy, we're all in the same realm. So like I did the same thing where it's like on Canadian Money, it shows the moon landing. I'm like, no, we faked that, not Canada.
Yes.
We pulled this off. I'm like, that's our psyop.
Right.
I'm like, you wish you could have had dirt on the Kubricks. You know? Dude, no, you're so right. It's all the way to break the spell is with the very sin that created it, which is pride. So give them the pride, but make it comedic. Let them jump that chasm, and then the spell disappears.
Right. Because that's why the boomers don't want to let go. Because their children hate them. They ruined the economy, and they were like, "Well, we went to the moon." Like you didn't though. Like you did. Like it's like how you said. I was like, "Oh yeah." So the guy's recording from there still to this day.
Dude, they tilted up and they left him there.
They live broadcasted it before anyone had the technology.
I think Owen said meth. The Nazi meth led to a tinfoil tree house for the moon.
Yeah, I mean the lander looks like a meth head's tree fort.
Meth head's tree fort.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how we get them. We gotta be like, listen, you didn't go to the moon.
Also, why is Canada claiming it? I never saw a Canadian flag.
Canadians deserve nothing.
Yeah, it's
nothing.
Like, let's dispel that.
What something? I
yeah,
find
the moon landing. Yeah, it's a lot of it's pride. I'm seeing all these white pride guys. They're like, "Oh, you're just trying to take away the credit of the white man for doing the thing that no one else could do." I'm like, you guys are such morons. You know, all those weaknesses, all those little Achilles heels of like pride and sloth and revenge. It's all right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why going through these chasms of like truther stuff, the way out is like gratitude and knowing it's all on your shoulders. And,
yeah,
you know, and people don't always want to hear that about accountability.
Yeah, I agree. And people are afraid to ask certain questions. It's funny though, because I talked to a lot of people they're willing to ask all the questions, but like more mainstream questions now. The second you bring up the moon, you know, they're like, how dare you?
Dude, like we are all uninvited from some Thanksgiving dinner because of this like topic right now.
I've got
like, 100%.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
I don't need to be at
because
that.
it scares them now.
What?
It scares them so much because deep down they think it's true, like what we're saying. Like, okay, fake birds. So there are crazy conspiracy theories that are so dumb that they don't actually affect anybody, that all the birds are fake and they're spying on us. Okay. Anyone who's watched birds hatch, like I have chickens, like that's obviously ridiculous. So that's why no one cares. They're like, oh, you question the moon landing so unbelievably stupid that it's making everyone stupid. I'm like, then why don't you get mad at the bird thing? That was on 60 Minutes. It's because they know how stupid it is. It doesn't intrigue anyone.
Right.
The moon thing, it's like, show me one time in human history, technology went backwards and people explored somewhere and then they just agreed to never go back. they destroyed the evidence, and everyone who works there is like retarded.
Also,
know?
that the super giga genius of our generation, Elon Musk, can barely like leave the stratosphere. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, no, they can't go back. The rover, and I used to have a physics podcast at Caltech. It's one reason why I'm so not phased by being called stupid. I've interviewed Nobel Prize winners on these topics, and guys, their stories are it's science fiction. They're like playing a game.
Was the goal for making everyone believe it just the Cold War? Or is there something beyond this where it's like, is it just mind control? What's the
Dude,
goal?
I'm to the point now, man, where I'm like, do they think they went? How much meth are we talking?
some do.
Right.
I don't even know. Like one thing I'm trying to do is like a way to be a better person is I don't assign, I try, it's hard for me, but I try not to assign intention unless
Right.
I absolutely know. I'm like, what if I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's almost impossible to think that they think they can go, but like, there's realms of meth-induced autism where I don't know how that works.
They just convince themselves.
Yeah. Like, oh, we have to shoot it here because the camera won't work. Everything's all about like for the betterment of the people,
Right.
to the point where you don't even know who the hell you are. I mean, there's like I've seen this in people where people lie too much. There's almost like a type of dementia where you don't know what the truth is anymore. And so you're just saying what you think will work. And so I don't even know if they carry that they're liars. Like they might just be in this place where they're like that happened to my dad. It got to a point where he would lie about the observable time if it suited him.
Right.
And I'm like, Dad, the sun is right there. It's not 11 at night. And he'd just be like, oh, and at 11 at night. And I'm just like, do you know that? Like, do you think it's that time? And I don't know.